There is definitely a space for Black beauty in Germany, but I still feel like it's somewhat centered around European features. It's like you can like be of a darker skin complexion, but they still want maybe like a little bit like the thin nose, you know, like the more defined features that are not necessarily representation of Blackness.
I've always said, and I will continue to say, that what Germany needs the most is Jamaicans. A lot of them.
That's something very specific. It's just this swag, this unapologetically being yourself. You can do nothing but admire that. It's just in them. Darker skin models do come prepared just for the eventuality. They show up with their own makeup, with their hair done, but guess who takes the credits at the end?
This conversation is brought to you by Brim's Bottles, African inspired. Get yours today at brimsbottles.com. Now back to the show. Good morning, Jessica.
Hi, hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I mean, I've been paying attention to your work for a while. And I thought you'd be a very good person to have about this conversation.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So to begin with, how long have you been living in Germany?
So I've been living in Germany since February 2027, exactly. So going on 8 years now. It's been a while.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's a long time. What have you learned during that time about Germany?
So much. I mean, of course, it is a huge cultural difference for me. I was born and raised in Portugal. I have a Cape Verdean background. But one thing I've learned, Germans are actually warmer than people would think them to be for some reason. And I guess if you just stay open-minded, you can literally achieve anything you want to.
That's very interesting. I'll find that as well. I think I'm known to say that I prefer German people to English people.
Okay.
When it comes to like warm relationships, like friendships, they're very good at that. You have to, there's a bit of ice you have to break first. But once you get through that, they're amazing people. So I agree with you on that one. So how was your life in Portugal compared to Germany? What are the things about Portugal that you prefer, and what are the things about Germany that you prefer?
I mean, I was also in two different phases of my life, but I would say you do notice a difference of your priorities. I think when you live in a country that doesn't offer you as many work opportunities, you tend to just, your priorities are different. And coming to Germany, I was able to really focus on what I wanted to be, and I felt like I had also the infrastructure to make those things happen. But don't get me wrong, Portugal is an amazing country.
I've been there.
Amazing country. But I would definitely say for me, it was just like the priorities kind of changed, and I felt like I could actually dream here, if it makes sense.
Awesome. So what do you do actually? I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a professional makeup artist. I've been doing this for going on 14 years. So I pretty much started while I was in college. And yeah, it's just literally I would say in German, Leidenschaft, or definitely my passion. It's just something that I really, how can I say that? It started already when I was like in my teenage years that I kind of was curious about, and I eventually went to college, studied translation. I love languages. I love learning about different cultures, but then at the same time, I always had this creative side of me that I really wanted to develop. So that's kind of how it started. I paired with like a photographer friend of mine, and from there we just started doing some different projects here and there. And eventually when I came to Germany, things just kind of developed, and now I'm here.
I've always been asked this question to myself. How do makeup artists start? Do you start on yourself, or do you start on other people? How does that work?
I mean, I'm assuming it's different for everybody. But for me specifically, it was just this, I found another person that was also as eager as me to just kind of get their name out there. And we just started collaborating, did a lot of free work. That's one thing as a makeup artist, I think a lot of people miss that step. And
the free work,
just to literally get your name out there, it is important. And then from there was literally, we started working with, let's say, models. It went from there, and we saw like that little niche with DJs, because DJs always need something new. From there went to music videos, and then you kind of just go, if you're good, you're gonna get hired no matter what. So
that's very interesting because I know there's probably a lot of people watching who've been wondering how it is to become like a makeup artist, how to make it in that industry, especially if you're a person of color. What was your journey like as a person of color when you started, maybe from Portugal all the way to Germany? What has that journey been like?
Well, in Portugal, I would say, because in the beginning I also associated myself with a Black photographer. I felt like we were very good at, let's say, catering to that community as well. And that's why we also grew big at the time. And for me, it was important that I really got to education as well. I know you can, of course, become a self-taught makeup artist and then amazing artists out there. But I just wanted for me to have that base. So I actually went to New York and I got certified there. It was also an experience because even during the makeup course, I was actually the only Black person in class.
In New York?
In New York, which was for me very surprising.
That's crazy.
I mean, so that was also an experience that I wasn't really counting on because I really wanted to go there exactly for that reason.
Yeah.
But it was somewhat for me also an advantage because I was able to be part of the process of also see how other artists develop within not knowing so much about darker skin tones, and still I was able to progress in my own career as well, right? But I would say in that phase, it was for me a bit shocking because, like I said, I went to New York, so I was expecting a different reality.
Yeah.
And coming to Germany, I mean, my first job was actually also with an English brand. It was their first time in Germany. So that was actually interesting because I was also the only Black hire and the only person that didn't speak German. But my manager was actually from the UK. So we just had a really good connection in the beginning. And I felt like because I was coming in with something different, people were sometimes a bit more curious about maybe just having this, let me maybe go to that artist, see what she has to offer. And I just I'm not a shy person anyway, so that kind of started there. And then from there to staying a couple of years on retail, and then now for the past 2 years progressing to being self-employed, is just this feeling of actually arriving in my authenticity. Yeah.
So you've worked with some of the biggest companies in Germany.
I've been always from the beginning working in the luxury sector.
In the luxury side. So what is it like in that environment? Obviously, I'm sure that they will try to create an environment that's welcoming to everyone. But for you personally, because there's some nuances that they will miss. What is it like in that environment?
I would say very much in the beginning, I still felt like the industry was not really catering just yet. So I felt, for example, I was being hired in these places, but I felt like I was not really in a position of being able to help customers that look like me because I wasn't given the tools. Because it took a while if you ask me, it was definitely way too late in certain cases, but it took a while for them to actually create the products and just have these things that really cater to the Black community to build that trust. And so I felt like it was a bit hard to, once again, like I said, this being authentic in my service because I didn't feel like I had the tools to do so. It definitely changed in the meantime, but this tokenism, it still was quite there, I would say. They were still kind of developing this hiring diversity practices, and they would kind of I feel like as a Black person, you have to somewhat be a little of a unicorn to even get into those spaces to actually be able to then be in a position of making a difference.
When you say you didn't have the tools, do you mean the colors for the skin tones?
I mean, specifically, exactly. So I didn't feel like I had, maybe they will come out with a line that has, let's say, darker skin tones, but then people don't think of undertones. Yeah, we're Black, but we're not all the same. We have different nuances to our skins, right? So that was the part that for me was hard, especially because I'm somewhat a perfectionist when I do my job. So, yeah.
So I'm guessing that now you're used to it, so you know how to maneuver these things.
No, definitely.
So back in the day, for someone who was new, how did you maneuver those?
I mean, I tried to work with what I had, but at the same time, I always tried to, it's like, if I don't feel like this is going to really cater to your need, I'm also going to tell you that. I can try to be creative with colors. I can try to be creative as to how we can maybe combine things in a way that serves you. But if I feel like there's honestly something better out there for you, I think it's part of my job if I'm going to offer a service to also communicate that.
I had a friend who used to do what you do, makeup artists in some industries in the UK. and she would take her own makeup sometimes.
Yeah, that's then a conversation for this phase, this stage where I am right now, where I work with different people every day. And it is very much a reality that, let's say, darker skin models do come prepared just for the eventuality. And that is sad. Yeah. That is definitely sad, but it does happen very often. They show up with their own makeup, with their hair done. I recently had a conversation as well about how often they are hired for certain jobs. They do their own hair, or their mom does their hair, but guess who takes the credits at the end? Somebody else that's on set responsible for hair and makeup, right? But it does happen. It does happen. And I feel that it's something that definitely needs to be addressed, because it's not fair. It's not.
It isn't. No.
So
what you're saying is they do their own makeup, or someone at home or whatever does their makeup, and when they come on set, whatever makeup, may probably do a touch up, but whoever's the credited person to be doing makeup takes the credit for the makeup.
I would not even, with the makeup, they will come with their products, but maybe they will like refrain from doing their own makeup. They will just like, in case you don't have it, then I have something for you. But with hair, it happens very often that it's even on a briefing, like, come with your hair with cornrows, come with your hair needs to come in a certain way, because they know they don't have.
Is this done just with Black models, or does it happen with?
I mean, but to be fair, I cannot even say there's just with Black models, because I've had, for example, for Asian models, Asians also have a very specific hair structure, for example, and sometimes it is not everybody that knows how to handle it to in order to have it sit right, to create a certain look. So I wouldn't just say it's just with Black models, but alone that's even a thing, because that goes also for makeup artists that call themselves professional, but if a certain person of a certain skin tone sits on your chair, then you don't really know what to do with them, then, I mean, at least in my opinion, then you specialized. You specialize in a certain category. Yeah. But professionally, somebody that can do anything.
Do you think there is enough Black makeup artists in the industry that you see? Or, for example, I find, because I used to work on a magazine a few years ago, and I would find that a lot of the time when people are hired, it would probably be the same faces. There wasn't a good variety of makeup artists being hired. Do you find that in Germany as well?
That's a good, interesting question. I don't know if I have like enough facts to really answer that accurately, but I would say it's a very small community. You can say that, of course, we are represented the same way as white makeup artists in Germany, which I guess with the demographic somewhat makes sense, but I still feel like it's still too small for the amount of talented people that we have out there.
Okay. Obviously, you're good at what you do. What are some of the things that you are seeing as you go about your work that you feel that you can, some of the things that you feel you can bring to the industry in terms of makeup artists, and what are you creating within that space for yourself and for others? Do you feel like there's anything that you can do to kind of lift that up a little bit?
I feel like I'm very open to I think conversation is important, and I feel like I'm very outspoken about that in those spaces. If I feel, for example, that certain things, whether it is a hairstyle or something that is not being, let's say, because it does happen that sometimes you would have somebody that hires a model, but they don't even know, let's say, what the hairstyle that they have, its name. I mean, I've seen as much as on a briefing with make sure the model has tied, how was it? I think it was something on the lines of tied braids close to the head. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a cornrow. You know, like if you're going to hire people, you need to know what you're doing, and you need to know that also has to do with language, right? So I feel like that's one thing that I'm very open about, just communicating, like what are things, you know, like what's the proper name for things. I think when it comes to the models, I do believe I'm somewhat like a little psychologist on set sometimes, because I'm literally their first point of contact. I'm somewhat sometimes the bridge between, let's say, then the photographer, the stylist, whatever the case may be. And I just try to make sure that they feel comfortable, because it's rare sometimes for them that they have the possibility of even feeling that way while being at work. So I think I just try to be a people's person, but at the same time also just be open for the conversation, because some people just literally don't know better. I don't think they mean it in a offensive way. They just don't know
Mm.
any better. So I just try my best to like open the conversation in a way that you learn something. And it's like, it's one of those things when you know better, you do better.
It's interesting you say that. So do you think, because I'm thinking now that maybe the problem could also be from the people who are doing the hiring. Do you think there's enough people doing the hiring or at that level of decision making to understand what is needed by the makeup artist, the stylist? Do you think there's enough Black people or people of color at that point there? What has your experience been like?
Not at all. I think we definitely need change in that sector too, because yes, it is good to see that there's things happening. There are indeed changes in the industry, but when it comes to these higher positions, I think Germany is definitely a country that has still a lot to work on. And if you're gonna have somebody else that doesn't look Black in those positions, they also, in the very least, need to know what they're doing and understand what it requires to be in those positions. So yeah, that's definitely important. That's definitely a conversation that should be taking place.
I've always been interested in the wider ideology of the German people themselves, and obviously subcultures like Black people and stuff like that. So I find that in Germany, a lot of people, rather than sounding offensive or naive about a certain race, they wouldn't ask at all. I think it's better than the UK, but I find it in Germany as well. Do you think that stops people from actually learning about what is needed and being able to make the right decisions?
I think it definitely plays a factor, and I think it comes from the fact that people, even if they want to, let's say, let me be specific, if white people are trying to understand better what anything that has to do with us, they are still searching for a level of comfort in that conversation, and that's where I think they miss the point, because the focus of this conversation is not your comfort. It's change. So, and if you don't really at least put yourself in that position of being open-minded, hearing out, and maybe you're going to say something that it's wrong. Maybe you're going to, but the point is you're going to learn something from this conversation. If you are lucky enough to speak with a Black person that is empathic enough to understand that we are all somewhat of a result of something, and that, you might not mean it in an offensive way, but it's important for you to do better next time. So let's just keep it real. So I think the problem is they look for comfort in those conversations, and that in itself is a definition of privilege, because the comfort is not the center of this. Your comfort is not the center of this conversation.
Let's talk about the beauty standards in Germany. You probably know more about it than I do, so enlighten me.
I would say, it's very much still an industry that caters to Eurocentric standard of beauty. I do feel like a lot of things are definitely changing, and you see that with advertisements. You see that on fashion shows. So there are still people that are trying to make a change. I feel like it's going literally step by step, but I think the only issue I would say that it's still very, very, how can I say, like, very obvious is this tokenism. Is you're gonna have an advertisement, but it's always this like token. Person. It's not even just the same person, the same type. It's like you're gonna hire a Black person, but let's make sure that person is mixed. It's not so often that you would see a dark-skinned 4C Black woman in the center of a big campaign. And I think, it's gonna take a while, and I think we all know that. But I would say like this tokenism, it's still a thing. And that goes for everything, whether it is when they hire a person for a company, when they hire a person for a modeling job, a campaign, whatever it is. And I do believe that those things are definitely something that have to be tackled. I do still see that there has been a change. I just think we should be doing much more.
So you said something very interesting. You said that it's going to take some time for it to get better. I struggle with that because in this world right now of this world of internet and social media, and access to so many people that you can pretty much see their portfolio by just going on their page.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take that much time.
It shouldn't, but
it's just a want and a will to do it.
We're going to go back to our previous topic. People are still looking, or white people are still looking for somewhat of a comfort in that conversation. And as long as they don't pass that point and understand that it is about something bigger, that's why I'm saying it's going to take a while. I do believe that it's definitely better, but yeah, complicated. But I think a lot of people are definitely starting that conversation in Germany in general, like whether it's influencers, whether it's things like when you see, for example, a brand like Afro Loco, that they are now on DM, that they are now on Putney, and those are little steps, even though they've been around for 7 years, but only now those things are actually happening, but they are happening just at a slower pace.
See, Germany for me is very, very interesting, and because I haven't lived there long enough, and I have been in the UK, I'm a bit biased. But I also have to play devil's advocate to a certain extent. What about doing for self? Are there any Black German publications that kind of, or Black media that is catering to Black people in Germany? I don't think I've seen very many.
I mean, to think now off the top of my head, I cannot really specify something. I do know that there's projects happening when I think it's Sister in Hamburg, for example, where they have a lot of conversations happening and they have things definitely being shifted. I do believe that it is important for us to maybe have those events on a bigger scale. If I'm going to compare it with London, for example, I just came from London from what they call the Black Business Show.
Oh, cool.
There is absolutely nothing more beautiful than literally getting into a room and experiencing this Black excellence in every field. And one of the conversations, for example, one of the seminars was surrounded fashion and how what type of mindset we need to have about building our table, about creating those spaces for ourselves. And then not just that, but also getting past we need to support each other, which I do feel like somewhat is lacking in our community too, just being there for one another. And I think when we got to that point where somewhat everybody's in the same level of mentality, we can definitely achieve those things.
What does that look like in Germany? Because I think there's basic things that should already be like a given. We should be able to get up, and I know there's a few great restaurants opening up, but things like that, we should be able to get up and just go to a restaurant that we feel, a Congolese restaurant, a Ghanaian restaurant, Nigerian restaurant, Kenyan restaurant, and there are certain things that we should automatically be gravitating towards. Again, people say it's getting better and let's give it time, but in today's internet, we should be doing a lot better. Don't you think?
100% agree with you. I think it has to do with each person playing their role. That's why when you ask me, for example, where I feel like I can contribute in my industry, it has to do maybe with opening conversation. Maybe the next person can come in, I want to open this restaurant. Let's just go for it, and making sure that we are behind those people and that we go and we support them and we are there for the opening, and we literally just support each other in that level. And I think it's also very much of a mentality of just wanting to do something and just get it done. Like, just do things first, ask questions later. Because I think this thing of like
follow the rules.
But I mean, then we're going to also tackle into a bit of the German culture, which has to do with following rules, which has to do with everything is done in a certain way, and it's been done like this for 50 years. It's been working, so why change it? No, you need that change because the world is changing, and you staying behind in things that have actually a very simple solution. So.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, a lot of it has to do with German culture. A friend of mine who was on this podcast, she did say that we cannot say Harmony, that's her name. Let's give her credit. She said Black people in Germany cannot be exclusive because the German culture is in such a way that you become a big part of it. So in everything that they do, there is a lot of influence on from white German culture or German culture as a whole.
I do believe it is a society that was pretty much built on a, how can I say? As I said, like everything runs in a certain way. That's why for me, I had things that for me was a complete culture shock. It goes from little details, just like here you can get into the bus on the back door. You know, the amount of trust you need to have in people to actually, you know, like, or just that would never happen in Portugal. It's just little things like that. It's just they do things in a certain way. They expect people to also just understand exactly how everything works. And that becomes a problem when you have then people that think outside the box, because it's just harder for them to even create those spaces, those whatever it is. It can also become a benefit if you know how to use that into your advantage, because you are thinking different. You are coming in with a different way of functioning, of doing things, right? So it's a little bit defining a balance, but I 100% agree with you. It's sometimes this influence of the German culture of having things done in a certain way. But just stay open-minded. There's different ways of achieving things, and two things can be right or wrong at the same time. You know, so
yeah, that's true. I mean, also should I say, to be fair, on the other side of things, I mean, it's easy for me and you to say because we've had different influences.
Sure.
Because I lived in Ghana almost my life, then before moving to the UK, and then before moving to Germany. So I have a wide range of experiences across other places where people are bold in what they do.
Yeah.
In Germany, you don't even find that. I even struggle to get people to speak about what they do in Germany because everybody is so kind of closed and don't want to seem like a certain way when they're talking about how good they are at things. So everybody tries to keep they downplay themselves, kind of thing. So being that me and you have seen life in a different way, it's easy for us to say maybe we need this and we need that.
True.
So speaking to, I don't know if you've had these conversations with people who were born and have lived in Germany. What are some of the answers or some of the conversations around this?
That's an interesting question. I'm trying to see if or at least if there's a specific conversation I can recall. I think we're just gonna go back to what we just said. Is they have a certain way that they do things, and it takes bravery and it takes courage. And I mean, I'm gonna also kind of say it takes almost sometimes a little of a background, maybe a struggle to even understand what it means to live in that bravery. And if you were lucky enough to let's say live in a society like Germany that has infrastructures in place that you don't ever have to get to the point of, resilience comes from a specific type of experience, right? Not to downplay anything of what Black Germans have gone through, because at the end of the day, they also have their own struggles. I can also only imagine how it was for them to be in school in Germany or just try to get their foot or be the first one to put their foot on certain spaces. Because at the same time, we need to explain ourselves a lot. That's why I feel like you really, as a Black person, regardless of where you come from, you have sometimes this thing of you kind of have to be unicorn to even, and then brings us back to building our own spaces, building our own tables, and making sure that we support each other when we're doing them too.
So let's go back to yourself. What is the goal? What is the ultimate, not dream, I'll say goal. What is the ultimate goal?
The goal, I would say, is to, first of all, be able to grow doing what I do, making sure that I do that with integrity, and that at the same time, I'm opening up, I'd say I'm opening up the possibility to help our community too. And by putting myself in those spaces, by, even if need be, creating those spaces, that I'm helping us doing more and be better.
So obviously you're not, what would you consider yourself? Portuguese?
Be more specific.
Because I consider myself Ghanaian British or Black British. What would you consider yourself?
I consider myself Portuguese Cape Verdean, definitely. I was born and raised in Portugal, but I was raised within the Cape Verdean community, so I speak both languages, and I'm pretty much a product of both cultures. Yeah.
So yourself and I, we're pretty much immigrants.
Yeah, definitely.
What are the difficulties that you, as an immigrant, have found within the wider German community and also within the Black community? What are some of the difficulties that you've come across, if any?
Well, I would say within Germany itself, Definitely. But I think most people struggle with that. Like the not knowing the language in the beginning is definitely a barrier. I think a lot of countries are maybe more open to people not speaking German. I think with Germany is a bit different. I think it's definitely a country that requires you to, in the very least, put in the effort to even be able to get anywhere, because they're gonna be very upfront with you. We do German here, you know. But one thing I do also have to say is that if they see you trying, they will definitely, because one thing they'll have to do is correct you. So they will definitely also help you along the way. So I did feel like that was, let's say, on a general perspective, my first immediate struggle. When it comes to the Black community, I'll have to say, I feel like with the Black community in Germany, I still feel like there's a lot of this Ghanaians hang with Ghanaians, Jamaicans hang with Jamaicans. And it's like, they open to, let's say, I mean, we can go out, we can have a good time. But when it comes to you to actually be part of the circle, for me personally, it was a bit hard. I would say I have a very diverse group of friends. From coming from all different parts of the world, and Germans included as well. But I do feel like with the Black community was a bit my experience. Like they're very closed off within their own
countries.
Exactly, within their own countries. And it was a bit harder to actually like build those friendship bonds unless you maybe had that background in common, which is somewhat sad because it's a very specific experience to Germany. I don't feel like, because I've been to other places and I feel like people or Black people in specific were a bit more open. But yeah, I don't know if that also has a bit of a German influence, or to say. Could be.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that either. But I do agree with you in terms of the sticking together in countries. Yeah, I've noticed that too.
But then again, if I'm going to see it from their perspective, that's also probably a way of surviving within this society.
That is true.
So it's a tricky situation, I would say. But for the most part, I think if you are yourself, if you're a good vibe, I mean, Black people like vibes. So if you're good energy, you'll be fine.
So do you notice because I'd like to think that wherever you go in terms of different countries with different Black communities, for example, if you go to Ghana, there is a beauty standard in Ghana that's very distinct. If you go to the UK, there's a beauty standard amongst Black people. I'm not talking about necessarily the general population. In the UK, there's a beauty standard that's quite distinct. America, I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would agree. I would agree.
Is there something? Do you see something similar? Because you work in that sort of thing. So
I'm thinking like if there's like a very to put it into words might be a bit hard, but I do still believe like there is definitely, let's say, a space for Black beauty in Germany, but I still feel like it's somewhat centered around European features. It's like you can like be of a darker skin complexion, but they still want maybe like a little bit like this, the thin nose, you know, like the more defined features that are not necessarily representation of Blackness, if I can put it that way. Like I said, it's kind of hard to like put everything into a category, but I would say it's getting better when it comes to maybe people don't think about the shades so much, because there is indeed, especially now in the fashion industry, you see a huge representation of beautiful dark-skinned women, but it's also very much a very specific look. It's either they have to come with their cornrows or they have to have a completely shaved head. And it's like there are space for us to be a bit more open-minded. But I would say, for example, the whole thing with the shades is maybe not just so much a thing anymore, but definitely I think people still think about maybe cultural backgrounds and little specific features that they want in their man, woman, whatever the case may be. So
have they gone, if they've gone past the color, are they beginning to look at things like, because if we're keeping it real when it comes to Black people, and correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to Black people, especially Black women, the standard of beauty for Black women is very, very different from what is represented on television most of the time.
Oh yeah.
Like you said, like a thin nose, even the weight sometimes, and the body shape.
Yeah, definitely. That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. We haven't even begun to venture that in Germany.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, as I said, I think we still somewhat in the trying to accept Black as a beauty standard, to go from that to accepting plus size Black beauty standards, or whatever, or if you have like a petite frame, also it's just, that's definitely another conversation. But I'd say on general terms, I do believe, like, as I said, like this, there's still this nitpicking into very specific features. There's not really like, I think with white women is just like, they just have a broader spectrum of acceptance. I mean, it's fine if you have straight hair, if you have curly hair, if you have short hair, if you have, and with Black women it's something then now very specific. Like it's cool if you have an afro, if you come in with a certain type of braid, if you are bold enough to just walk in shaved, but then all the nuances in between, it's like, I don't know. It's like I said, it could be a long conversation.
I find those kind of nuances very interesting to dive into. I don't know if I've seen a beauty standard in Germany yet, in terms of amongst the community.
That's why I'm saying it's hard to put it into words.
I don't think I've seen one. It's kind of, it feels like it's a collection of many influences and not a kind of one that's born out of kind of uniqueness.
Exactly.
Because I remember back in the days when I first moved to the UK, there was a thing I used to see about the Black girls in the UK, that being from Ghana at the time, it was like, what the hell are you lot doing? They always used to wear tracksuits like boys.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I was like, like that was very different for me. But as time went on, I begun to see what that meant to them and how they put that into making it their own sort of like standard beauty. And they had the little finger wave things going on and the hoop earrings and stuff like that. Yeah. So I begun to see a UK twist on urban culture for women. Interesting. And that was very interesting.
I would say one thing I definitely have to say, and that for me was somewhat of a cultural shock, was the amount of Black women in Germany that are that, for example, with they wear their hair straightened or straight wigs. Because I came, for example, like Portugal also has a huge influence of the African countries who speak Portuguese, right? And I was used to seeing more people being unapologetic about their coarse hair, their curls, whatever it is. So coming to Germany, I did notice a huge influence on just a straight wig look, which for me was just something different. I didn't necessarily give it too much thought. I just thought, well, I mean, that's how they do things here. But I would say that that's something when it comes to maybe the Black beauty standard in Germany, even within the Black community being something very specific, like a very specific look that I wasn't really accustomed to.
Yeah, I guess sometimes it's interesting as a foreigner looking in. They would say otherwise, that obviously that's your experience. But
yeah, exactly.
I always feel like the person who's new to the situation is the best to tell you what is probably going on within the situation in terms of from a bird's eye view. I'm interested in solutions as well when we're having these conversations. Do you have any inspiration or any sort of what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say utopia because I want it to be realistic. Do you have any inspiration or any sort of idea of where you hope that the beauty industry for Black people will be like in, say, 5 years' time?
I don't know if it is a fair comparison, just because let's say the Black experience in America is, for example, a total different story. But when I think of the American beauty standard, you still are able to go nowadays to the streets of New York, for example, and you see everything, and nothing is weird. Nothing is too much. Nothing is, it's just people are, I think it's just about this spirit of being unapologetically you that I do feel like it's missing a bit in Germany. I don't think you see so much of that within the Black community. It's definitely once again getting better, but it's just seeing people like wearing their dreadlocks up until their butt, you know, and unapologetically wearing those bold colors, even though the weather outside is not really the most inspiring, but, you know, just literally just be bold in your choices. I mean, when I think, for example, how sometimes I go to jobs and I see, it's like you go and you meet another makeup artist or whoever is part of the beauty team, and it's like they're like, so they make themselves so small, like in their presence. And I get it, we are not the star of the show, but I still am the beauty team, and the person needs to come and be able to sit on my chair and somewhat try to emulate this energy or this aura of what I'm trying to offer as well. So I try to always come looking my best, feeling my best, because that's exactly how I want that person to come out of my chair, right? So I think, and this goes for every single aspect of whatever you do, it's just this, as a Black person, just not feel like you always need to do things to just fit in, just show up as yourself. And that's exactly what's going to get you to the next, to the next gig. Because people, at the end of the day, being talented and no matter what you do is going to get you the job, but being yourself, it's going to get you the regularity, it's going to get you the career, if it makes sense.
I thought about something whilst you were saying that, about being bold and being unapologetic. I've always said, and I will continue to say, that what Germany needs the most is Jamaicans. A lot of them.
That's something very specific.
They need a lot of Jamaicans.
That Jamaican confidence.
Here's why. The Jamaican confidence, the Nigerian confidence is something. But Nigerian confidence, when it comes to fashion, still wants to look good. Jamaicans don't care. Like, they dress bold and are
that
like,
is so true.
Because when I first got to UK again, and I saw Jamaicans, like the yardies, and they'd be wearing, the women would be wearing pink wigs, pink, and I used to think it was weird. But as you grow up, you start understanding that it's because of people like them being that bold that we can also be bold, like in terms of Africans, because we saw it, whether we didn't like it or not, it influenced us. And everybody begun to be very bold in how they present themselves.
Exactly.
So now having a pink wig is not weird, because the yardie woman down the road is going to do a better one than you. So I think Germany needs a lot.
No, that's actually such a good point. I mean, I do be hearing all about these jokes that Nigerians are the Jamaicans of Africa. Exactly. So and it is very true. There's something about like this. It's just this swag, this unapologetically being yourself. That, and I mean, and you cannot do nothing but admire that. You can do nothing but admire that. It's just in them. It's literally, it's not on them, it's in them, you know. It's just,
I'm sure if there was a lot of them here, it'll make, in the beginning, it'll make a lot of Africans uncomfortable, because we're not generally like that. But as time goes on and you start making friends with them and start speaking to them and finding their perspective and things, you just realize they're just regular folks just like you. They're just very bold.
Yeah, they just don't care.
Yeah. So
they're probably really just out here in this job, like money if you make, you know.
Do you know what I mean?
That's it.
So I really hope, I don't know how it's gonna work, because Germany is not very inviting like that. But if there was a lot more Jamaicans coming to Germany, I think things will.
Oh, listen, this will be a total different place. I mean, just get me all those dance hall parties.
Yeah, they're very bold like that.
That's true.
So if we switch back to the hopes and dreams thing, in terms of media. And when I say media, I mean in its fullness: television, music, news, magazine, whatever we can term as commercial media. There seems to me, from what I see, a lack of representation. And like you've mentioned, and if there is representation, as a person of a certain look, what would it take for that glass ceiling to be broken, in your opinion?
Well, there's two different ways to go about it. Either we are bold about creating those spaces for ourselves and literally forcing that door, that foot on the door, or you're gonna have to have, or I would hope that we start also having people that understand their role as an ally in the cause. And those opportunities will have to be open to us as well. because it doesn't cost nothing to literally just give it a try, like just try, because there is definitely a demographic and there's definitely the customer out there that will want to see that. And even if they cannot relate themselves to what you just presented, they would at least be curious about the fact you're presenting something different. So I think it's just this being open-minded, and I mean on both sides, whether it is on the Black community or the white community, just being open-minded about being for the cause and understanding what that actually means for the future. And there's definitely a way that we can make this happen. But it is important because, as we can pretty much go back to the beginning of the conversation, you still have this thing where you always have that one Black person that's hired just for the sake of a statistic. It's like, yes, we are inclusive, but what is the inclusivity? It's not including one of us. It's making sure that you're fairly opening up this space for any of us to be able to at least, in the very least, dream of the possibility. Because it doesn't make any sense that you feel like you need to work 10 times harder, go and break your back just to be able to make it to these spaces that certain people don't even put half as much heart in it. It just doesn't make sense. So,
and do you know the people that opened the door, the Black people that opened the doors for you in your industry?
In the industry, I would say my very first photo shoot in Germany was actually with the Yakoi Studios back then. I got to know Leonie. I don't know if you know her, but this to say, through her at the time, I was able to, let's say, get my first gig, which I was very, very, very grateful for. From that point on, I can honestly tell you, it has not been Black people that have opened doors for me. I've been trying my best to adapt to the situation that I'm in and making sure that I create that opportunity for myself. And of course, I had help along the way. But to answer your question specifically, I cannot recall a Black person that I can tell, yes, that person was there for me and made sure either to mentor me or no.
What about, because I was also thinking maybe you'd mentioned people who have come before you doing what you're doing that you looked up to. Because, example, in the UK, I'm going to embarrass myself because I've forgotten all these names.
Just give it a try.
There's a I know there's a Black lady by the name of Pat something.
Pat McGrath.
Yes.
Yeah.
She is somebody that you can look up to and be like,
100%.
I want to be like that, or I want to do more than she's done. So that's those are the kind of people that. Did you have anyone in Germany when you were starting?
In Germany?
Or do you have anyone in Germany that you can?
Not in Germany, I have to say. If anything, I'm trying. I don't know if you know, her name is Vanessa Myrick. She's also a Black makeup artist from New York. Actually, I got to know her work specifically in Germany because she happened to do a workshop in Berlin back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And I was just like, let me just give it a try, because it's a Black makeup artist. I don't really know what she was about. And it was so inspiring to see the way she goes about everything. Her approach to makeup was something so refreshing. And that alone has been something that I've been trying my best to emulate in my work, wherever I'm going. And just her story, just the resilience, and the kindness that she, till this day, she's now a huge brand. It was so hard to find her products in Germany. Even there's one or two specific stores, online stores in Germany that offer her products. And everywhere I go, I'm like, you need to get this artist, you need to get her products, because it's just literally like, just put the word out there. And with Pat McGrath, it's the same thing. She's had such an influence in the industry on an international scale. And to see now that her products are being sold in Douglas and all of that, it's beautiful to see. I mean, don't get me started on Fenty Beauty, because it's not like you didn't have other brands that were, let's say, not offering an option, but it was the fact that Fenty Beauty put it out there as in, I'm celebrating this. And from that point on, you saw the change happening in the industry. And if you think of everything is correlated. The Black Lives Matter movement, when you, even in Germany, the same way that it was everywhere in the world, people going out into the streets and making sure that their voice is heard and that they expose these issues. because racism is indeed a fact. And anyone that is denying that then is completely oblivious to what's going on in the world. And even that influenced the beauty industry, even that influenced the fashion industry, because those CEOs maybe had to go ahead and maybe think about their hiring diversity practices or whatever the case may be. And that's why it's important for us to always kind of like just stay up to date. And that means for everybody.
It's a good way to see things. And I'm hoping that they can get the Black German. I kind of consider myself an honorary Black German now because I've been here for a few years.
For a while, yeah.
But what I would say is, and from having conversations with, like I said, I started meeting people who are really doing well in their industries, like doctors and lawyers and politicians. And the general consensus, because a lot of them, I asked them to be on my podcast, and a lot of them are like, I don't want to do that, because they don't want to put themselves out there. And I'm beginning to think that maybe we, the foreigners, might have to do that. So my hope for you is your trajectory be as loud as your trajectory as we possibly can.
Working on it.
Because there's young girls out there who are looking for a Pat McGrath to look up to. You could be that person to fill those shoes.
I hope so.
Do you know what I mean? So I'm thinking that, and I know there are some Black Germans out there that are doing that, putting themselves out there. But on the most part, a lot of them feel like it's a German thing where you just have to be very low-key about what you're doing.
It's just the not being afraid of, I mean, you've worked so hard to even be where you are. Why can't you celebrate that?
Absolutely.
Why can't you be proud of that loudly, right? Because, I mean, if you're out here exposing your work and making sure that people appreciate your art, why can't you speak on it? And for one, if you can even do that, making sure that you influence other areas and that you can help other people just progress, even if it has to do with their own self-esteem, about being proud of what they do. And I think that's definitely very important, and it takes a level of courage. I'm not gonna lie.
It is.
And courage also comes with vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I think vulnerability is something that in general a lot of people struggle with. So when you're able to get to understand that those two are correlated, you'll be good.
Because I feel like it's playing a part in what I think is a brain drain from Germany. A lot of Black Germans move to the UK, to the US to actually become what they've dreamt of becoming. But that's because they see examples in the US and examples in the UK. They don't see examples in Germany. So I think it's always advised my friends who are doing really good things, like, be loud about it, because if not for yourself, for your kids and for the younger people coming.
Definitely.
So I truly believe that. Jessica, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We can have this conversation forever. Like, beauty is definitely something that is very important in every Black community. So I think this conversation can go on. Any last words? Anything you want to add?
I would just say, I think we're going to pick up on the same point. Just be unapologetically yourself. Be unapologetically Black. Come to that corporate job with your dreadlocks. Wear whatever you want to wear. And I mean, we're going into 2025. There's just certain things that if they're not accepting about you, you better make sure that you're bold about it in their face. You'll have to eventually. So.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's been a good conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Hopefully we can speak again at some point.
Sure.
And share more ideas.
Let's do that.
Awesome.
Perfect. And thank you so much for having me. I mean, you've built here such an amazing and important space.
Thank you.
That I really feel like everybody should just be paying attention to, because I really believe it's going to go places.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you
welcome.
very much.